Hello, and welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. Today, my host is Alisha, who I met recently, a friend of ours. We have a mutual friend who introduced us because Alisha was having some concerns regarding her 2-year-old son, Denver, and her friend thought that I would be able to help. So we met, and it has been a wonderful experience. I've worked with Alisha and her family. Just one day we've met, and just one day, and I was able to give her some tips and tools, which I hope have been helpful. And but we'll talk some more about that as we go along. So welcome, Alisha.
Thank you so much for having me, Teresa. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, you are most welcome. Because I feel what you have to say is so critical to the messages that I've been trying to share, to the reason that I became an infant toddler developmental specialist, because parents don't know what they don't know. And I want to take the blame away from parents. I don't want to put it anywhere else, but I want to take the blame away from parents and empower you with tools and just information to help you on your journey.
I'm so glad that you said that, because for so long I blamed myself. I started to think back, during the time that I gave birth, what went wrong during the delivery? Did I pause too long between, my pushes? Was there something happening in the womb that could have caused the situation? So you saying that just really brings back a lot of feelings and emotions that I've had recently that just come back since he's been born.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, honestly, take a deep breath and just let that go. Exhale it all out, because you had no part in this. You did the best you could. And if you knew differently, you would have done different. But I don't think it's anything. I don't think that there is anything that you could have done to change the course of things. Okay.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that now. And like you said, even that one day that we met, just gotten a lot of information from you. And again, I'm so happy to be here and have this conversation with you today.
Awesome. I'm excited too. All right. So when Denver was born, when did you first see signs that maybe he wasn't meeting developmental milestones?
I'd say we first started to be concerned as a family shortly after um, turning 1. That's when it started to really hit. That's not to say that prior to age 1, we didn't have concerns, but we decided to hold off on our concerns. We thought maybe our concerns were a bit too premature. But at age 1, when he really didn't progress like we thought he should. I mean, I purchased books, even though I'm a mother of 2 prior to Denver. I still did the normal thing, purchase developmental books, baby growth books, things like that, watched videos. And then again, after 1, he's not hitting certain milestones. He's not talking, adding extra words to his vocabulary, not making eye contact. We were like, okay, something's wrong. And what we'll do as a family is when we go to his doctor for these baby visits, we'll bring up our concerns then.
Awesome. And did you bring up your concerns to your doctor? I know the answer to that, but I'm just going to ask you for everybody listening.
Of course, of course. My husband would say, Alisha, maybe we shouldn't say something today. But I'm like, no, we're going to get this out. He knows better than we do. So let's just go ahead. Every time we have a baby, let's go in, let's just jot down our concerns and bring them up to him and see what he has to say.
Awesome. And your husband's reactions are typical. I hear that so often, like, oh, it's okay, baby. We'll just do, it'll be fine. He'll grow out of it, and why bother the doctor,
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm glad you bothered the doctor. Now, what was the response? What did you hear from the doctor after you expressed your concerns?
Oh, goodness. So we heard everything from, "Oh, he'll be fine," to, "Oh, it's a boy thing. He's a boy." Um, you have girls, right? Boys learn a lot slower than girls. They develop a lot slower than girls. Or, yeah, I get it. I hear that a lot. Just wait a little while. Things like that.
Right. And again, I'm not blaming here. I'm just saying not all doctors are informed as to developmental milestones. You would think that you would hope that your pediatrician would be, but not all of them are. And
Yeah.
again, they go to the old, oh boy, how many for the, if I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I would be one of the wealthiest girls around. Um,
Yeah. I agree with you. And I felt like I was being brushed off. It's like, yeah, yeah, okay, he's fine. Let's just go ahead and take care of these shots, send you on your way. There was never an introduction to alternative options of getting him evaluated, of care. I was never introduced to resources like books that might address my concern or other families, things like that. So I was a bit discouraged, I'll be honest. But again, I felt like this isn't my area of expertise. I haven't dealt with this before. So maybe he's right. Maybe I'm just an over concerned parent. He was my first boy. So, hey, what do I know?
right, exactly. And you trust the authority figures. Now, I'm going to ask you to trust yourself more than you trust anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay? Because as Denver's mom, your gut is your gut. You connected to him. He was connected to you for so long. And that connection didn't go away just because you had birth and they cut the umbilical cord. They might have cut it physically, but you have gut feelings. That is your guidance for your child.
You're right. You're right. And I've learned that. And I'm continuing to learn that. Um, I'm now more empowered to speak up about my concerns and follow through on getting them addressed and being heard. So this again is now all falling into my lap. It's a lot. It's a bit overwhelming, but I'm in it with Denver, and we're doing this thing together to get him the help that he needs now.
That is so wonderful. And I mean, gosh, he's such a sweet little guy and he learns so fast, doesn't he? Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, he does. He
Yeah,
does.
he is amazing. Um, so I'm going to ask you, so in our meeting on Friday, because we just met,
Mhm,
like, we
mhm,
we were introduced before, we introduced
mhm.
ourselves to ourselves before.
Yeah.
That was a funny story that we won't go into today.
Yeah, we
But
will.
but when we met on Friday, what okay, so I gave you some tips and tools. And I
Mhm,
just want you to share with our audience what helped you. What were some of the things that helped you the most? Because maybe if you're sharing what helps you, then somebody might pick up on that and say, oh my goodness, I can probably use this with my child. Because now it's coming from a mom. I mean, yes, I
mhm,
am a mom too, but it's coming from a mom who's in the same place that they are right now. So, what were
mhm.
some things that I said or I showed you or we did that were helpful?
Right. One of the biggest things that I learned from you was to follow through. Prior to meeting you, I'll be honest, because I wasn't being heard, because we really weren't on one accord as a family with how to address the concerns that we have with Denver, we wouldn't follow through with even the basic things like walking him through a tantrum, you know, emotionally supporting him through a tantrum or following through with our commands or our communication with him. So to me, that is the biggest thing. Just follow through. Also, you talked a lot about meeting him on his level, having eye contact with him, kind of sit down to his level, look him in the eye. When you say his name, say it softly. He wants to associate his name with gentle talk, not firm and aggressive talk. And oh gosh, we're using that thirsty hand gesture. We're just doing that all day, every day. But learning how to communicate on his level through hand gestures, and slowly introducing him to that item that he's asking for. Another thing is just gaining that confidence as a parent. And there's so much I can go on and on. Let me just list a couple more. um, Allowing him to, if he falls out, just allowing him to go through that emotion and learning um, what it feels like to have a little bit of pain now, because he has to learn that. You don't want him to learn it later. And being on one accord as a family. So understanding what action steps we have to take as a family and making sure that everyone is on the same page, because getting Denver where he needs to be is key. And I'll be honest, the podcast, I'm doing it with you today, but those sessions, where you talked about different milestones, understanding the child's emotions, talking happy, the inflection in your voice, or just anything like, hey, Denver, we're outside. Do you feel that wind? You feel it? How does that feel? Just talking to him constantly and introducing him to that language. It's been so impactful.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you found them helpful. And again, thank you for sharing, because again, it's more powerful coming from you. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that, because my goal is to improve the world, many
Mhm.
families at a time, using this podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
And I'll be honest, before you, I didn't know what a behavioral analyst was, or an infant toddler development specialist was. And you think that taking him to his doctor over the course of almost 2.5 years, someone would have brought up these areas of specialty to me or my husband. And it wasn't until, our introduction by our mutual friend that I'm like, oh, this exists. Wow. Let's get the ball rolling.
exactly. And I'm so glad that you have, and it's never too late. That window
Yeah.
between 0 to 3 is so critical. And that's why I became an infant toddler developmental specialist,
Yeah.
because after 3, yes, a child will still learn and can still learn. There is still hope, but the biggest window is 0 to 3. They are ready to learn. They are primed for learning. So, and they are
Yeah.
sponges. So I just want to pour everything into them.
Yeah.
And, so you mentioned it a little bit, but go into a little more detail about the things that Denver was able to learn in that 2 hours that we were together.
Oh my goodness. You saw it. It was amazing. Being able to communicate what you wanted through a hand gesture. So, for example, in that short window, we taught him how to say he's thirsty with his hand movement. At first, he was really aggressive and antsy and whining and reaching for it. But you're like, no, Timber, are you thirsty? So, at one point on his own, he communicated with that hand gesture, down his throat to his chest, that he was thirsty, and he was so excited. We were excited. He went through a whole cup of juice that day. Um, Also, just a moment of pause. Like, and you saw how he would normally, when you first came, he started to have a tantrum when I came out of the room, and I stepped out. But I think he learned through that communication with you and me coming in at some point, patience, being patient, being able to be on our level, we be on his level, and just work through those needs and those things he was trying to express.
Awesome. Which, I mean, for me is so exciting, because when I tell people that change happens sometimes within minutes, they don't believe me. And you are actually a testament to that.
Yeah,
And we also worked on him signing EAT. And again, like
yeah,
you said, just waiting, because waiting is so critical. When in life don't you wait, right?
yeah,
If a child learns to wait and knows that you're coming back, then that eliminates a whole lot of tantrums. And it
yeah.
makes it easier for you to live life too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, it does. And if I can recall, he even had a moment where he had fallen or something, and me as a mom, I'm normally rushing to his aid to pick him up. You're like, "No, mom, no, mom, let him figure it out." And he figured it out. he didn't cry or just have like an outburst of outrageous emotions. He was like, "Oh, I'm fine. Let me get back up and let me go up these stairs and start back talking to Miss Teresa and mom and dad." So it was amazing to watch in minutes, in minutes.
Yes, yes. And there are a lot of people who have the belief that ABA it's cold, it's not, there's no feeling in it. We're creating robots. Did you have any time feel that?
No, not once. Not once. I felt like we were starting to equip him with the right tools for him to go into other environments outside of the home, go to daycare. As he gets older, when he interacts with peers and other children, it wasn't cold, it was necessary.
Yeah. And, Denver gave me hugs, which
He
is awesome.
did.
People
He
think, oh,
did.
yes, because he feels, Denver, like children feel, they know who cares about them. And yes,
Yeah,
sometimes, even though they have a tantrum, he knows it's coming from a place of love. And he got lots of hugs that day.
he
You
did.
know?
And he did. And he even expressed happiness. If you can recall, at one point, he realized, hey, I did this. I asked for what I wanted, and he clapped. He clapped. So
Yes.
he was just excited as we were. And to me, that shows that these children, though they have delays or interruptions in their communication, they understand. And I can imagine how frustrating it's been for him. It's been frustrating for us as parents, but I can only imagine how frustrating it's been for him. And I could see at that moment that he felt relief, he felt accomplishment just like we did.
Yes, yes. And that's what I tell people. Stop taking that feeling of accomplishment away from your child by doing too much for them. Yes,
Right.
help them, but allow them to struggle a little bit. Because in life, we struggle. And when we come through that struggle, we know better, we learn more.
That's correct. And you shared that as well. I'm so glad you said that. That's another thing that helped me as a parent. Don't take that away from him. You never know what a child can do if we're constantly doing those things for them.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, oh my gosh, this has been so amazing. I don't want to take up a whole lot more of your time. So, I actually have two more questions. Okay.
Sure.
So, what actions have you taken since we met? What have you done?
Mhm.
What have you learned and what have you taken?
Denver and I talk day, all day. Every moment, every chance that I get, I'm using a lot more words, even though he may not be able to understand what I'm saying. I'm having full conversations with him constantly. I found out even when he's eating or we're sitting down, instead of standing above him and bending down to talk to him, I'll just sit next to him. I'll sit next to him, we'll talk, I'll hold him. I've reduced screen time. So I thought I was helping. Usually he watches only learning videos where we introduce him to letters, words, and apply pictures to those letters. We aren't really big in the cocoa melon or things like that. Um, but I've reduced that screen time and and introduced more personal one-on-one time between myself in Denver, his siblings in Denver. They have their personal time where they talk to him and his father as well. And just books, even if it's not a kid book, when I'm reading, I'll just make sure he's around. As long as I can keep him still, he doesn't sit still long. But for those moments I can keep him still, I'll read with him there so he can hear those things and that can resonate in his mind as he continues to go about his day. And other action steps, again, I'm just letting him have it. You want to have that tantrum, you want to have that emotion where you have to fall out, go ahead and do it. You can't do it for long, but we'll talk through it. Once you realize, hey, mom is not going to pay attention to this, I'm going to get up and then I'll go to mom and maybe pull her towards what I want or hold my hand out, then we'll go through that. So there are a lot of things that I've been working on. It's a lot, I'll be honest, but every single day I'm just committed to doing it because, again, it's about Denver. It's about getting him to where he needs to be.
Absolutely. And I always say, if you do the hard work now, it gets easier later.
Yeah,
If you,
definitely.
yeah, if you don't, it gets harder. You'll be caring for him all your life, and he won't develop the relationships or any of those things. So it just gets more difficult later if nothing's done.
That's correct.
Yeah, I know something else. So you were also given information on, to contact early steps
Hmm.
and all of those other, tools, because it's really important that you contact, the early intervention people in your area to get, all the help that you can. Because I always
Yeah,
say it's better, even if, it turns out that, okay, there are no real concerns, go through all the testing. It's better to,
exactly.
yes, err on the side of caution.
That's right. That's right. We rather do all the tests now just to rule out any possibilities. And if he's fine, thank God.
Yeah.
If he's not, we still thank God, but we now have the information to be able to get him connected to the right specialist to tackle it now sooner than later. So, like you mentioned, been introduced to early steps. A situation happened in our lives personally. It actually turned out to be a blessing where we were able to switch from his former pediatrician through new insurance to a new pediatrician that hears us. She listens. So we've been referred to an OT specialist, occupational therapist, as well as a developmental specialist. So these things are all happening fast, but they're happening, and we're in it. We're in it.
Awesome. Awesome. And any future actions?
Yeah, just continuing to commit to his therapy, his speech therapy. Once we get in the door with early steps or his occupational therapist committing to their schedule. Um, us as a parent, just doing those little tips and tricks that you introduced us to, and I'm just ready for you to continue to roll out these sessions with this podcast because I'm telling you, they are super helpful. I listened to like three in one day. But as you roll those out, that will be an ongoing step on our list. Let's plug into Teresa because she knows her stuff.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And also, for those of you who don't have time for, or don't have the ability to listen to a podcast all the time, my book will be out soon. And the book is called How Can I Help My Child Communicate, which will be out in the beginning of July. So I'm excited about that as well. So it's a
Yes.
very short book that will give you the tips and tools, a lot of those things that we talked about, but it gives you the tips and tools from 0 to 3 that you can really use to help your child communicate. So I'm excited about that as well.
Yes, congratulations on that. I'm excited too for you.
Thank you, ma'am. All righty. Do you have any questions for me, Alicia, before we sign off?
I do. You've already been so helpful to us. Again, I truly appreciate your insight, your information, and the support you've given us. Again, just in one day and even today, are there any additional tools or tips based on what you've seen from Denver? Every child is different. Denver, he's a social butterfly.
Yeah.
It's just areas of communication and language where he hasn't thrived. So, for his particular scenario, are there any other tips or tools that you would recommend for our household dynamic with siblings where the gap is at least 10 years and then his father and I?
Yeah. So the one of the things, so because he's the social butterfly, if you can get him around children his age, that would be amazing because he would learn so much more from them than he ever will from us, right? Because
Mhm.
children learn more from, people that look like them, their age group. So
Mhm.
if you can do that, whether it be a play group, just something where there are a few children, because if it's just one, they may not gravitate towards each other. But if there is a group of children that he can pick from and gravitate towards, and even just sitting and watching them, just observing them interact and listening to them interact, that will be so helpful for him. Because as you said, his siblings are a lot older. So having him around a peer group would be very essential, would be important.
Great.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, ma'am. I wish you all the
Thank
best.
you.
Have an amazing day and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time as well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I just want to tell everybody out there, parent with confidence.
Bye bye.